wonderful listeners, and welcome back to Reading Light, the podcast shining a light on book topics and discussions. We're all about discussions here, not reviews, so keep that in mind. I just want to cover some silly, fun little book topics, subjects, ideas. Yeah, I called it topics. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, can't even get my intro down. This is only my second episode, so I am still finding my footing, I'd like to say. But, you know, I also just want to have fun and kind of want to ramble and chit-chat and, yeah, kind of just get my thoughts out there. That's kind of what this is. And what else is podcasting but just throwing your, thoughts out there. Am I right? So anyways, welcome to episode 2. Today I am sipping on a Pepsi Zero Sugar. I was considering maybe every episode I have a new beverage or something. That actually was my first idea for this podcast, was stories and soda, where I would talk about, things and sip on soda, I guess. I don't know. That obviously that did not go how it maybe was planned, but we ended up here now. But anyways, I could still bring around the soda idea, right? Everyone likes sipping on some zero sugar soda, or sometimes it might be full sugar. Who's to say, but, or it might not even be soda. You know what? Just thought of that now. But anyways, welcome to the second episode. Sorry, my little tangent went off there, but how is everyone doing? I know you can't answer me, but I hope we're all doing well. Today's episode, since we're still kind of in the process of getting to know one another, I thought we could talk about maybe some book habits, specifically possibly toxic, maybe even triggering book habits. Some of us may have, especially me and stuff. I thought what could be fun for this episode is we can go through my quirky, unfortunate habits that maybe, make people some cringe a bit. Then also I found a Reddit thread that someone asked this exact same question, what are some of your crazy habits for when you're reading and stuff? And I thought to go through maybe some of those people's kind of answers, kind of get my thoughts and ideas around that one. I'll definitely link the thread down in the description and everything. So total credit to all these people and stuff. I won't be mentioning names when I'm speaking about them here or anything, but I will still credit the thread just so you don't think I'm making this up or something. Definitely if it runs into some issue or whatever, the thread will be removed or whatever, but I'm kind of using this just kind of as my way to see what other people think and what other sort of habits they may have that I don't know, I don't consider or whatever, but this may, I hope, maybe as this podcast goes along, maybe this can be a way of incorporating some conversation, is asking for answers or prompts, responses, questions, or whatever that can then be turned into an episode, just to have sort of maybe some back and forth and to jump off points, because, I am one person and I think maybe sometimes my brain ends somewhere, but maybe not. So that's kind of our breakdown for today. Hopefully this is a nice little fun, little lighthearted kind of thing to think about. And I'd also love to hear your quirky reading habits. Definitely, you can email me. There's an email in my description and stuff. Let me know, do you have little things? And maybe that could be a whole nother thing, is where I review people's little stories and ideas and that kind of thing. What did they do? So yeah, let's just jump into it. I'm going to jump right into exposing myself with my quirky reading habits, and I hope none of these make you want to throw up, or I don't know if it's that extreme, probably not. But first off, my biggest one, and this is something I still do to this day, and I only do it because I really kind of suck at getting a bookmark, even though you will see in later episodes I love bookmarks. Sometimes it's just not in the cards, and so yeah, I dog ear pages all the time. All the time I dog ear them. This was my go-to move when I was younger, especially. I just didn't want to use a bookmark. This kind of stems from because I had to come up with a way where I would remember which page I was on, not just only I was here in the book, but which side. Was I on the left page or the right page? And so dog earing was a lot easier to be like, okay, I dog eared this page, which means this is where I stopped reading. I come up now with things for bookmarks where like, okay, if the print is facing this side, it means I was on this page when I was done reading or whatever. So, but the dog earing was a lot easier and it was a lot quicker and I didn't have to worry about putting my bookmark somewhere or losing it or whatever. So I would just, flip down the corner. My mom would get mad at me. Well, I wouldn't say mad, but she'd probably get a little frustrated with me, especially because I was doing this to library books, which in hindsight is not good. Don't ruin your library books like this because that's just not nice, obviously. So yeah, I would do it, and I still do it kind of now. But I'm definitely better at getting bookmarks. I've gotten a lot of cool bookmarks over the years that I love using, and I have so much fun with them, and I love looking at bookmarks, and I always want to buy more bookmarks now. But at the time, I was a menace. So that's okay, though. I do apologize now, and I've definitely learned my ways. But that is probably my frustrating and probably kind of cringes to actually like fold a page in a book. I get it. My next sort of odd reading habit I would probably say is I will simply not finish a series. This might sound a little kind of odd to some people. Either it's odd because you are like, well, I don't do that either, or you're thinking it's odd because you're like, how dare you? I know some people who are very hell-bent on if they start a series, they will have to finish it. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. They will have to finish the series. Whereas some people I think are like me who like, if I'm not feeling it after the first book, I think I'm just going to drop off. Even if, I'll maybe go as far as to read the second like description of the book. But if I finish a first book and I'm not like, wow, I want more, like I'm just like, okay, that's it. I don't need to continue this. There's a lot of series I have started and finished. It just isn't, I don't know. Even if I am like 2 books in, I'll just be like, no more. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know what it is. This has become more rare for me now. I am someone who reads less series, I would say, or less like super intertwined series. Some of the mysteries I read are like the same characters being used, and there's worlds in that, and I don't feel so inclined to read that all the way through. But this was more of an issue, I think, maybe when I was younger and would sit down to read like a whole like back in the day. my girlies around my age would remember back in the day when the YA dystopian genre was running rampant. Everything had to be a series. Everything had to be minimum 3 books, and we need to be able to maybe make a movie out of this and all that. So I would just drop books. I after the first one and just won't finish the series. It's not the worst thing on earth, but it is something where some people that makes them cringe a bit. But that's okay. That's totally okay. My next habit, you probably maybe picked up on this if you listened to my first episode about my reading history, but I do switch all the time between physical books, Kindle books, and audiobooks. I cannot stay with one format. And it's more of just like an urge. It's not so much like I just decide to. It is like if I don't switch up the format, my brain won't want to read anymore. It goes through pretty major phases of like, okay, I can read everything on Kindle right now, and that is the greatest thing on earth. I love this little thing, and I just read. But then all of a sudden I'll wake up one day and I'm like, I can't stand looking at this anymore. I need a physical book. Or I'll be like, actually, I can't sit still anymore right now. I need to do an audiobook because I need to be doing 50 other things, or else I'm not going to be able to read a book. So I go through pretty extreme, drastic things. And it's really surprising me when I will see some people who will they stick to a format and they don't budge. They're like, I've seen many people actually online who have said that they have to read ebooks on their phone. That's their best way of reading or something. And it blows my mind, I guess, a little bit. because I can't comprehend. It might be part of, like, I do have ADHD, so it might be part of that. All of you listening are probably nodding like, yeah, girl, I think that might be part of it. But I've got to keep changing it up, and I'm not ever super dedicated or married to one format. I'm always open also to new formats of reading books. I do enjoy sometimes my iPad. I do have I have an iPad, I think it's a Pro. It's very old, but it's a bigger screen than even just like a laptop screen is. So sometimes I have to dive into those to read them on, but that can then be overwhelming at certain times. So it's a whole process, but I'm constantly switching between formats, and maybe that drives people up the walls. I do think it is one of my quirky, maybe my toxic sort of habits. Another one, my next one kind of has to do more with how I rate books on, specifically I use Storygraph. So I've completely abandoned Goodreads, like totally. I'm Storygraph lover for life. I will, of course, if you do ever see my Goodreads for me, it is still hooked up to my Kindle. So sometimes stuff gets lost in translation there, and it will register on Goodreads that I finished it or rated it or whatever. But I am mainly a Storygraph person. However, where my toxic thing comes in, that's not my toxic habit. Using Storygraph is not the toxic thing. My toxic thing is I will rate books, but I have never written a review for a book. Well, I guess I shouldn't say never. There might be a couple of instances where you could probably go back and find my little reviews, but I just don't. Even one line, people write like super cute one line little quirky stuff. I have never. I just don't. I never think to. I never feel the urge to write any thoughts about a book. I don't know why. That seems maybe a little kind of odd, especially because I am such a prevalent Letterboxd user. And I review movies on there all the time. They're not the most in-depth. I'm not out here writing, essays on movies, but I do write cute little things maybe. But just for books, that's never been something that has really grasped me. And so I don't think my Storygraph feels a little maybe it's unreliable. I still rate based on stars and such. But other than that, it's really a funny thing. Well, at least it's funny to me. Maybe it's not. I imagine listeners on this episode are just like, girl, what the heck are you doing? But it's funny to me. It's kind of an odd thing to me. But yeah, I just never have thought to do that. One kind of, I think, fun book habit that I maybe do, and another one I think I mentioned maybe in my previous episode, but I do take books kind of everywhere. It's not as crazy as it used to be when I was especially younger. I was taking books genuinely everywhere with me. If we had to go somewhere, if we had to go to some function, if we had to go out for dinner, I was taking a book with me. I'm not that obsessive anymore. I did learn to let go. I was kind of using books maybe as grasping onto something, or just giving myself a way out of social situations, which not great. But I still kind of do it. I try to take a book with me. Kind of. This is mainly more prevalent, obviously, if it's an e-reader situation or it's on my phone, which obviously my phone is with me all the time. So technically, yeah, the book is with me kind of everywhere. But I also kind of like that because I don't think there's anything super wrong with if you are in a situation where maybe you're alone or you're waiting on someone or you're just out and you need something to do in the car or something. I don't think there's any shame in pulling up a book on your phone. It's kind of fun. I think people do it for other things too. Definitely fan fiction and stuff. People definitely pull up. So I do kind of take books with me everywhere still a little bit. I've gotten better. But physical books do sometimes still end up coming with me. It's not anything crazy anymore, like I said, but it is still maybe kind of maybe an odd habit, I would say. um, Speaking of my physical books, this is a weird transition, but I would say maybe a toxic habit is my books are in no order on my shelf. I see a lot of people who pride themselves in the order that their bookshelves go in, and that is such like more power to you, girl. That's amazing. I'm so glad your books are organized by subgenre or authors problematic to least problematic. That's fantastic. But that can't seem to be me. When I first got my new bookshelves, because I'd had the same kind of bookshelves, which is really small. It was kind of frustrating. It was a small little thing in my room that I had, obviously. I wanted to get a new one because I was acquiring more books, I was reading a lot more, and two, I wanted something newer for my room that looked nicer and was more grown-up-ish, because I'd had this bookcase since I was way young and whatever. So once I got my new bookshelf, I tried my best to come up with a system, and this is going to be really funny as someone, if you know me, I did just graduate with a master's in library science. So to say that I don't have an organization structure for my bookshelf is kind of ironic. Probably, but I tried my hardest to come up with something. I wasn't doing anything like, the Dewey Decimal System on my bookshelf, but I was trying to keep stuff like, okay, series at the tops, thrillers in the middle, romance here. I tried doing that, and it has all just really fallen apart as books have come in and out of my collection, and stuff just wasn't fitting right there, or I got more comic books because my comic books, unfortunately, I need a better space for them, but they do live on my bookshelves, which not the craziest. I don't think any people would blink an eye at that, but they do take up a big portion of it, and those should, I think, live somewhere else. They should, in my opinion, at least for myself, be separated from my normal books, but so stuff kind of got off the rails, and now it is such a mess. I do love the maximalist kind of style of a bookshelf, but it's also chaotic, and there is no order. I just know kind of where stuff is. I do my hardest to keep series or authors together. So my ACOTAR books are all in the same spot. My Hunger Games books are all in the same area. What else is there? Oh, my John Green books are all sectioned together. So I do my best in that front, but it's, I wish it could be better. And I'm very jealous of everyone who has super aesthetically lovely, pleasing bookshelf orders. One day I will get there. One day. One day. I have the skills, as I mentioned, but just haven't moved it there. My sort of final kind of bookish odd habit that I would say, and this is more kind of a personal odd thing. I am such a fiddler of my hands when I'm reading. I need something to do with my hands, and I find I bite my nails only when I'm reading. I don't know what it is, but it is my, I don't want to say, I was about to say it was my favorite thing, and I don't think that's that's the right phrasing, but it's definitely my biggest habit is I gotta bite my nails while I read. I don't know what it is. I think I need something to fiddle with. I need to get better at finding fidgeting things. My hands just need to be moving all the time, it feels, especially if I'm focusing on something or just sitting somewhere doing something. Need to have something going on. Need to be moving a little bit, I guess. So unfortunately, that is, I do consider that a book habit of biting my nails while I read, and it's one I really hope to conquer one day. Well, that is all of the quirky reading habits that I felt I possessed, and I tried to really dig deep and to really expose myself, but I couldn't think too, nothing felt too crazy or too toxic, I would say. So, but I think these are things that maybe make people raise their eyebrows, or maybe not. Maybe you're like, girl, I do all those things too. But as I previously mentioned, I do want to then dive into some odd habits I read from people on Reddit that I thought was kind of interesting. I'm not going to get super detailed. I'm not going to read people's posts like word for word, but I did pick up on sort of clues that they had or keywords or just kind of summarizing concepts that I thought were very, very interesting. As I also mentioned at the beginning of the episode, this will be linked in the description so long as I can keep it there and there is not any issues. If there are issues, be removed. You know why, yada, yada. But I do want to cite and give credit absolutely whenever I can. So these people consider them weird reading habits. Like, what are some weird reading habits that you have? And the OP, they had an interesting one that they shared where when they start reading a novel, they will immediately read the end. I have never heard of this one. Is this a thing people do? You'll like read the end? I think when I was much younger and I was really into like reading like Scooby-Doo mysteries, if I was getting frustrated and just wanted to give up on the book, I would skip ahead to just read who like was unmasked. But I have never felt the urge to do that for anything ever. I don't know. I think that is so fascinating that you'll go and read the last like chapter or a few pages or whatever. That is really, I don't understand, I guess, the process behind it. Is it sort of a, you know what, just kidding. I maybe do kind of get the process of it. I think it might, at least from my perspective, this could be something like when you rewatch the same series because you know what's going to happen. So there's like no anxiety around it. So I think maybe that would, but I also just can't think, I don't know. I kind of just want to be surprised with my books, I guess. That's a really curious one. And I was really glad of OP for sharing that because that is really fascinating. Someone in the comments who responded to this thread said they get secondhand embarrassment from books, which I know that they said weird reading habits and that's the whole kind of premise of this episode. I don't know if that's weird. I totally get it. I totally feel that person. Maybe they think it's weird. Okay, I won't take away that they feel that I think it's weird. You're entitled to feel that your behaviors are some way. I want to personally tell them, though, I don't think that's weird. I get secondhand embarrassment all the dang time. I will have to stop watching stuff. I will squirm out of my skin for stuff. Okay, I think of that scene from Perks of Being a Wallflower. You know, the one where it's the, kiss the prettiest girl in the room or whatever scene. If you know, and you're like, and watching that for the first time, you're just like, I need to stop. I need to walk away. So I definitely do understand getting the secondhand embarrassment thing. It can feel weird, I guess, in the moment because you're like, why am I invested in this? Why do I care? But I definitely get that. Another commenter I thought was interesting was someone said they had an obsession with highlighting to the point that they like can't do audiobooks. I thought that it was so interesting. I don't know why. I think that, well, I keep saying I don't know why, and then I think of a reason why. So maybe I should just get my thoughts out there a little bit further. But yeah, they said they had obsession with highlighting, so they can't do audiobooks, which I think that's very fascinating. But I get it, I guess, because you like want something to do and you want to be engaged with that, so you want to highlight. And I think that's really curious because I do think for audiobooks you could like take notes, but I get that though. I have never heard of someone having such an interest in highlighting. I really like that. I definitely am one who I've dabbled in annotation, not to the point I think some people have. Like I can't do it all the time. I've done it for some main books. Like I really enjoyed, I think when I read Little Fires Everywhere, that was one where I definitely did. I sat down and I wrote out annotations, like I had like these little like those little like sticky things. They're like little Post-its, little see-through ones, and they were different colors on the end. And so I would assign different colors to mean different things. Like, this is a flashback. This is about bad behavior or something. This whole thing. And then as I would go through it and I noticed that I'd put a sticky in, and it was pretty fun. It was pretty interesting to do. I also did it for Pet Sematary, which is my favorite Stephen King book. I felt it was a really fun way to engage further with the text, and I had read it before, so I kind of knew what I was looking for, but it was just kind of a more fun way to engage and stuff. So I kind of get it, but I have never known someone to get so into annotations like that, and I think that's really interesting. I do really like that, and I think that is also kind of one of the most frustrating things about when I read on like a Kindle or something. If there is something I want to highlight, I feel like I'm not doing anything when I do highlight it. Like, it just feels like bizarre. I don't know. It's hard to explain it, but I did like that one. I think that is what I consider that a weird habit. I definitely might agree with them that is an interesting one in that sort of thing. I was really curious also about another commenter who is all about finishing books in one sitting. This was one that I thought this was really curious. They had prefer to read a book in one sitting. Especially, I believe they commented specifically romance books. But I don't know if I don't know if I could do that all the time. I have definitely read books in one sitting, that for sure. I do recall that. Especially like over the weekend, if I got nothing else to do, I'll read a whole book in one sitting. It's so much fun. I definitely would do it. What was it? Oh, our power like went out one summer, and I was reading something. I just knocked it out basically. So I definitely get it, but I think that is such a curious habit to have, that you like constantly have to be like finishing books in one, or at least certain kinds of books. I will give them credit. They didn't say like all books, but certain ones to be finishing in one setting. That's really interesting. Let's see. This person said they despise covers with real people. I am so intrigued by that, because I don't know if that has that turned me off. Let's see. Despite books, they like refuse to read a book that has a real person on the cover. Interesting. I think I've definitely been off-put by some real people books, especially I think this is most egregious in like the romance territory, and sometimes it is kind of the artwork. I definitely know if you find like I don't know if this is super common now I think so. For paperback romances, you have like the first page, the inside cover, I forget what they call that, where you have the people in a more romantic position or something like that. But yeah, real person on the cover, it does get a little odd in some instances. As I said, mainly romances, I would definitely say they can be a little off-putting, because I guess I kind of get it. You are like, if you're out reading and someone sees the cover, they may be like, what the hell is going on here? I know that's the case definitely with like the romance ones I see on like Kindle and Kindle Unlimited and stuff. Thankfully that's on the Kindle, so it doesn't feel as odd. But yeah, real people on the cover, it can be a little off-putting. It makes the book feel, at least for me, it can sometimes feel like a little cheesy maybe. The book could be fantastic. The book can be great. And I hate judging by a cover. Obviously, you're not supposed to do that. But I sometimes can't help but feel a little something about these folks in that sort of way. So, but apologies to anyone who poses for covers of books. I'm sure you're fantastic. And I get the vision. I do get the vision. So now let's see. What else do these people say? This person, I definitely judge books by the cover, they say, which kind of goes in the other one. I definitely get that. There has been actually another person who said they will read the ending of a book first. And this person goes on to say it like influences if they will read the book. That's curious. That definitely is a weird one. I don't know if I'd want to be spoiled like that. I don't know. That's really curious. I don't think I could be spoiled like that. If like you're reading the ending first and then like, oh yeah, I want to see how it gets up to that point. What if it sucks how it gets up to that point? Would that like be like a downer? Would that ruin it? And what if you're like missing the plot twists? Because they're not plot twists anymore if you know the ending. That's really curious. That is, I would consider that. I would probably agree that that's a weird one. There's another person who said they read the... Oh, this one's interesting, where someone has said that it's uncommon for people to read epilogue and prologues. And that they say they always read them. I always read them. Is that... It's uncommon for people to read prologues and epilogues? I can kind of get it, not with the prologue. I think the prologues are super important and there's a reason that they're there. Like that, like you need that context typically, or at least that insight into something. But epilogues can sometimes feel ridiculous, especially if it's like a series and like if you're on book 1 and there's an epilogue, it's like, girl, maybe this could wait for book 2, like, right? Like, what are we doing? But, I don't know. I would, yeah, no, it is a little, that's a little odd to me. But some of the epilogues, I think they just don't do anything sometimes. I feel like especially sometimes with romance books, they kind of become a little predictable in a way because they are like, so many of them I feel end with like, oh, the couple got married or they're gonna get married or oh, they had a baby. And it's like, okay, sure, I expect that, I guess, like great. Cool, I could have probably told you that, maybe, I don't know. So sometimes they do feel a little bit unnecessary for me, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world, definitely. Let's see, what else? Someone said their weird reading habit is to immediately look for like the smut level and like how serious the smut is, which I get. I don't think that's too weird. If you're... I guess it depends if you're someone who wants a lot of spice or do you want a little less spice. I think that's really fair to hunt around for. I don't know if that's weird. I guess maybe it depends what your influence is. Like, what's your idea? But this person says that they have to start several books before they like commit to one. I think that's really interesting. I kind of like that though. That's your habit of you gotta like start so many books and give them a go before you like really settle on one. I kind of love that because like I get it. Like there is sometimes, and maybe I'm the only person who thinks this, but there is sometimes a lot of pressure to like pick a book and stick with it. Like I'm going to pick this book and I'm going to read it. I've definitely found this, especially when I do like the little libraries in my area. I am like, you feel like you got so little time because you're standing on like the side of the road looking at these books and you just got to like commit to one. And it's kind of like, well, what if it sucks? Would I want to at least maybe think about it but maybe not. But also I walked over to this little library and I got to pick out a book. So it is quite a lot of pressure maybe. So I don't think starting a bunch before you decide, okay, this is what I'm committing to, we got to take it all for a ride, we got to sniff out our choices and really decide here. I really like that. This actually one here feels like an actual kind of weird habit. this person kind of has a thing where they have to read in like so many chunks of pages. If they like count page numbers and will like chunk it out if it's like in multiples of 10 or multiples of 50, multiples of 25, that sort of thing. That's really interesting. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone who does that, where they have kind of like a schedule for how much to read. I definitely did encounter that if I had like assignments. I would map out like, okay, you got to read this many pages to go to this and then go to this. But I've never done that casually. But I don't know, I hate to really do label these people's habits as weird. They're obviously labeling them weird themselves. So I do apologize if I keep using that term. It is just the heading of this post, or this title podcast is called Toxic. I don't know if that's a little harsh maybe. And it's just kind of a catchy title there. But I do think some of these are pretty unique, and they are kind of making you think about like, okay, what are these like interesting habits, I do think this one's curious, where someone will be reading one book, but then hear about another book and will stop reading one book to then immediately go read the other book. And then they describe it as it's like kind of a cycle. So they'll get to book 10, but then they're going to stop to read book 11. Like it's a constant battle of so many current reads. And I think that is particularly very curious. And I think that's really interesting. I can't imagine. This kind of ties in, I guess, what I just said last time, where you pick a book and you like really got to stick to it. That's what this feels like for sure. Or at least that's what I feel like happens, and where I'm at is I got to pick it and stick to it. But it's curious to see other people don't think like that, or maybe they do it like unwillingly. And so they're suddenly like, I don't want to stop this book, but I got to stop this book because now I heard about this book and now I want to read this book and I want to do this. I think that's really kind of fun though, because then you're kind of like pleasing yourself in a way. Like you're satisfying something with you that you have decided you want to do here and do that and go here and do that. So I don't hate that. I think that is kind of fun, and I think it's nice to kind of respect your own thoughts and your interests in the moment. I do feel that it can be probably super frustrating, and I'm definitely someone, I get that. This feels like when you start a new hobby and then all of a sudden have no interest in it next week. So I get where maybe some frustrations could come from, but that is also really curious, and I do think that's kind of fun. It kind of is, I see that almost as being like, reading maybe doesn't need to be so serious in a way. Well, it is a serious thing, and it's still reading, but I feel like there can be so much pressure, especially I encountered this when I was really into book talk, that there can be so much pressure about what you're reading, when you're reading it, how much you're reading, are you finishing this book, when you finish this, that, when are you reading this, are you going to read this next, you got to read that, and it sometimes can spiral, but I think maybe that happens on all of social media, so I don't actually want to single out one platform, but this is kind of fun, casual way to be like, actually, I'm going to stop this book and we're going to jump over to this one. That's really interesting. Oh, I like this person's one. They say they count letters in really long words. And that they have to do that. If they come across a super long word in a book when they're reading, they got to stop and they got to count the letters to see how long it is. That's really fun. I don't know if I could do that. I think my brain would be really upset with me if I kept stopping and thinking that way. Sorry, I just realized I introduced my whole Pepsi at the beginning of this podcast episode and then realized I didn't take any sip of it. So there's I don't know if you can hear that. There's my Pepsi break. We'll continue. Go through a little bit more of these perhaps. I am kind of doing this kind of organically. I did read down some summaries and stuff, but this is kind of fun to kind of discover and think of what I think to say. Oh, I like this person who rereads the same thing over and over if they like it and they don't want to move on. That's really fun. I kind of like that. I kind of savor it. That's kind of a fun way to kind of really sit with a book or a piece of media and think, yeah, we're going to look through this and we're going to do that. That's really cool. I do kind of like that. I can't see how that might be a little frustrating maybe at times to sit there and reread just one section, but I've done that definitely if I came across cool phrasing or like a real crazy, like in the current book I'm reading, it's about two detectives. They're married and the husband said something to the wife that was just so like my jaw was on. I gasped to myself, and that was definitely a moment I like sat with and like, for lack of better words, maybe held space for, you know. But it was a really ridiculous, it was kind of a crazy scene. So that's definitely one I definitely had to reread because I was like, oh my God, how did we? Because then also sometimes you reread stuff and you get to a point and you're like, oh my God, how did we get here? Like, I know I just read how we got here, but like, holy crap, how did we get here? So that's kind of a fun little thing. I do like this person. This is one reading habit I can actually kind of relate to. So I don't think it's weird at all, but maybe it doesn't, maybe other people do or don't. But this person said when they're reading it, they will assign basically actors to the characters just to like see them in their head and stuff. And I think that's really kind of common, and definitely I do that. I'm more inclined to do that sometimes when there maybe is already a casting for a character, especially like if it's becoming a movie or something. I will start thinking of that actor as that character, and they will become that in my head for a little bit, but sometimes not. Also, it's a really funny thing. It's a real funny thing. But I can see that. I can definitely see that. I don't know if that's super, like I said, I don't know if that's super weird, at least in my case, because I can relate to that. But it does take a lot. But sometimes I really struggle with actually picturing these people. I do rely a lot on perhaps like the cover art, or if I have seen fan art of, how the person describes it or whatever. That really helps me a lot to picture them, or else sometimes everyone just kind of looks like some generic blob in my head. So maybe that's a toxic reading habit, is these people just turn into blobs in my head. Very cool. Okay, well, I have very interesting. These were very interesting to really look into and kind of consider other people's perspectives of what they consider to be like a weird sort of reading habit. It was kind of fun to dive into, and maybe even consider my own. I definitely do, I think, share some odd habits with other people, and it's really all about making sure that whatever you're doing is helping you have fun with reading. I think reading should just be enjoyable. I think it should be a good time. I think it should be informative still, and just interested in it. You want everyone to have fun with their reading, and whatever habits you have that make you inclined to read more, definitely go for it. Of course, never let it get too crazy, I would say. So, but this was fun. This was a fun little thing to really consider and really think about. So thank you so much for listening. I do hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed maybe the little rambling. I hope you enjoyed hearing other people's perspectives. Hope you like hearing my perspective. Please feel absolutely free to share your habits. What do you do? Did any of these resonate with you? Did any of them make you want to scream or something? Feel free to let me know for sure. I am always curious, and so I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next episode. Okay, keep on reading.